Hey everybody, this is Perch. I like this. I like this mail. I think I correctly. This is less of a question and more of just a statement, but it's a good one. It outlines kind of the challenge with comics and ideology and the storytelling. So I'm trying. I'm trying. It's hard, and obviously if you've been following the videos every day, you see I'm failing a lot. But I'm trying to be more positive, or at least show like the and here's how you can succeed kind of method. So it's just not all like blah blah bitch bitch bitch. It's actually some positive stuff. So let's get into this. This Perch. The problem is not that comics are quote unquote too political. The problem is that the discussion around comics is too sectarian. With sectarian discussions, you are said to be either in one sect or the opposing one, and any divergence from the beliefs of a given sect is thought to place you in the other camp. This is why you, Perch, are frequently thought of to be a member of each group by the opposing side. Sectarian thinking is inherently binary. Sectarian thinking is poison to storytelling because individuality itself is locked on with suspicion. To be effective. In sectarian climate, heroes too must appear to be in the sect, and the list of beliefs must be held is too long to leave room for much to tell the characters apart with. When we sit down to tell our children a story, or in my case, my grandchildren, we aren't thinking about telling them who to vote against. We tell them stories. We tell stories to them. We want them to feel the wonder, the magic, the danger, the excitement of the storytelling itself. And that sort of experience is what makes most of us want from comics, readers, writers, and artists. Without sectarian blinders on, we may realize we have more in common than the current climate would have us believe. Well said. I mean, that's for sure. That was a really good, solid mail, simple, easy storytelling. Look, I like there's a couple things in there, and first off, it is less about the story itself. A lot of comic stories, there's definitely outliers, but remember, we're seeing like 600 comics a month. So if you take a lot of those comics and you just take any one random one and you tear the cover off, and this will there's unfortunately this is an experiment. It's hard to do because you can usually tell by the art and everything else. But if you hold that comic up against one from the 70s, in many cases the comics will read the same. The strength of the 70s and 80s, by the way, in comics usually had less to do with individual issues and more to do with the combination of the issues together. That era, they definitely preferenced long-form storytelling and stories that continued and built upon themselves. If you just take a single issue versus a single issue, there's a lot more similarities and differences. Again, barring some exceptions where the goofy writer is trying to play to whatever is going on in current times. And for what it's worth, writers in the 70s and 80s tended to want to do that too. It's just that editorial clamped down a lot harder on the writers. They did not let people write things in that were not evergreen. Now, it still happened, but there was a lot less of it because the editor, one of the things that certainly in Jim Shooter's regime was, hey, we can't have comics, so topical that they feel stale, 2 years later. And so there's a definite attempt to do it better. So I think that this is, basically, it's less the story and it's how people are interpreting the story. You saw this with this whole Joker business. I mean, basically, when you looked at the comic, you had to make a call. Is the Joker, is this a statement about male pregnancy or not? If you viewed the comic as a goofy Silver Age story that was done poorly, I did think the story was dreadful, but like me, I viewed it as they're trying to tap into Silver Age and failing, but this is just meant to be kind of dumb, wacky, lowbrow humor. The Joker, is clearly such a moron that he can't even figure out what's going on. That's how it came across to me. Other people viewed it as, a DC trying to deliberately troll the viewers, the readers, and basically make a political statement through the comic, and they were outraged about it. This is the difference between you have two people read the same book and you get two different responses, but it's how we're interpreting the stories.
Now, just to be clear, I'm not placing the blame on you or me or anyone. We're going to interpret stories how we interpret them, and the climate that exists around us is encouraging this. We live in a world where, we are definitely encouraged to view comics and things in this lens. We're encouraged to view things in our very specific political sects. That's what we're told to do. That's what we're doing. But that's not, that's not how it's meant to be. And the fact that we slipped into this is a problem. The other kind of interesting aspect to that mail, which I agree with, is that it is poison to storytelling. So the challenge you have here is when the writer or the creator of the comic, when they also fall into this trap of you versus me, well, this leads to a lot of really stupid behavior. It leads to writers thinking things like, I can't write, the Red Skull as a threatening villain in my comic, or somebody will think I'm a Nazi. That's where you get to. If this is, if this is allowed to kind of continue and fester, you get people who are starting to put these kind of political sects, very, very tightly knit ideologies into their stories. Or at the very least, they yell at the people who are reading the stories. And I know there's, the whole expression of, you need to separate the artist from the art from the artist. But let's be honest, that's a lot easier said than done. And I think a lot of people will say that very casually of, no, just don't worry about what Dan Slott is saying online. Don't worry about any of this. Just read the comic and enjoy it. Yeah, that sounds good, except when you by the way, it sounds really good. Wouldn't that be wonderful if you could just consume all media just on the surface, looking at its merits? Who cares about the people behind it, right? Well, I mean, the challenge is if you watch a movie and you see, created and produced by Harvey Weinstein coming on the top of it, where does your mind go? Do you start to, when the actress comes out and is in a swimsuit and, looking sexy on the screen for a Harvey Weinstein movie, do you start wondering what she did to get that role? I do. And I mean, it's hard not to. It's impossible to fully separate these things. I do wish more creators would understand that when you go online and you rage at people, whether you think you're being, by the way, it has nothing to do with how you believe you're being. It has to do with how you're being perceived. That cuts everywhere. It's certainly have your own beliefs, but if your beliefs conflict with how people are perceiving you, yeah, it's going to have an impact in your art. Al Ewing made a comment of what I do on Twitter should have no bearing on how people view my comics. Yeah, except it does. I'm sorry, it does. Again, it would be nice to live in this utopia where it doesn't matter, but if you go online and you say things like, all these people are terrible, awful people, I mean, you just gotta hope that nobody identifies in that terrible group. Otherwise, they're going to feel like you're taking a shot at them. And when you're really explicit about it, and you say things like, hey, this one political party, of which represents, roughly half of the U.S., are awful fascists. I mean, you run a close to 50% chance of pissing off the person reading it. And when you do that, and they go to the comic shop, and they look on the shelf, and they see your comic there, it's going to be very hard for them to go, well, I know the writer called me a horrible Nazi fascist, but I won't think about that while I'm reading the story. I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is. Yeah, I think that's asking a little too much from people. That's very hard to do. It is a shame because, again, to this mail, I like this. When you sit down to tell your children a story, you are not thinking about telling them who to vote against. You want to tell stories to them. You want to feel the wonder. You want them to feel the wonder, the magic, the danger, the excitement of the storytelling itself. The story is meant to be pure. The story is meant to be something that, the listener, the person engaging with it, can connect to. That's what the story is all about. If you get in the way with that, if you put obstacles in front of that, things get very, very bad very, very quickly. At the very least, you're pushing people, and we live in a climate right now where the world, or at least this country, several other countries too, are pushing really hard to have you be in one camp or the other camp. They do that quite bluntly because it's super easy to manipulate you. It's super easy to raise money off you. A lot of the outrage YouTube channels, a lot of the comic channels that just yell and scream at you and want you to be really mad about something, they just want you mad, because when you're mad, you click, and when you click, you give them money, and that is precisely why they do it. Some of them don't even know they're doing it, but a lot do. They view you as a bank, and they're just trying to get money out of you as easy as humanly possible. That's what outrage merchant world is all about. How can I grift this person out of their wallet? If I get them angry, that'll do it. If I get them thinking that half of the country are fascists, then they'll open up their wallets and they'll fund my campaign. It's as simple as that. And if you don't have great ideas, and unfortunately right now, there's a definite deficit in good ideas out there in this country, or these people who have them. If you don't have great ideas, at least get people mad. If you get people mad, you get their cash. The problem is, for comics, for kind of imagination and storytelling, it's poison. It's absolutely poison. No matter what the idea, no matter what the outrage is. If you're selling off of kind of anger and rage and sex, not sex. Sex works great, but sects. If you're selling off that, you're gonna convert the faithful, the people who want to join the outrage train with you, the people who have not figured out that they're just pouring their cash into you. And that's it. And as we can see from a lot of the comic sales numbers, it's a small market. Small. Thanks for listening.